You're with the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for starting your week with us. Over the weekend, the U.S. and Israel launched attacks against Iran in an operation that has already taken hundreds of Iranian lives and 3 American service members and is engulfing more of the Middle East each day. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have international law expert Adian Cover from Case Western Reserve University on to talk about how we got here and what's ahead in Iran. Now, for today's show, IdeaStream brought you stories last month about how artificial intelligence is rapidly changing our lives in our IdeaStream Explores AI series. We learned how AI is impacting students' learning, evolving the workforce, and about the environmental costs of data centers and the massive processing power needed for generative AI programs. We hosted a Sound of Ideas community tour here at the Idea Center, which you can go back and listen to or watch on our website. But we were involved in another live event as well. The Akron Press Club hosted a conversation about how AI is affecting journalism. It was moderated by our own deputy editor, Andrew Meyer. He talked with Phil Trexler, the editor-in-chief of the Marshall Project Cleveland, and Mizell Stewart, a professor in residence at Kent State University. It was an informative conversation, and we wanted to bring you part of it to kick off today's show. Stick around because later in the show, around 9:30, we'll talk about colorectal cancer and how early detection can save lives. But first, here's our Andrew Meyer asking guests at the Akron Press Club how this moment with AI compares to the emergence of the internet in the 90s.
The correlation between what the media saw when the onset of the internet back in the early 2000s versus now, there's this fear of the unknown. There's this fear of how do we accept this new technology? How do we embrace it? How do we present guardrails? And how do we do it in a transparent way so that our audience knows that a human created it and not a machine? So I think what we're seeing so far is on Sunday, everyone saw Chris Quinn's column on cleveland.com/The Plain Dealer, and it created a firestorm of responses. If you haven't read it, I recommend that you do. But he told the story of a college applicant who was not fully embraced on their idea of how they're going to do reporting in the future, and that's having AI actually write the reporter's story. The reporter goes out and gathers the news, and they spit their notes into a program, and the story is written by AI. And that created quite a controversy and is still being talked about. So I know at the Marshall Project, we are using AI, and we're using it on a limited basis. Our data team has used it on occasion. It's wonderful technology that cuts our work drastically when in terms of data analysis. They can take a big stack of police reports, feed it into AI, and write their programs, and it will digest and spit out facts about what that stack of police reports will tell you. One thing that we do there, though, we do it in a very transparent way. We have policies in place that we tell our readers that AI was used in the creation of it, and we do not have AI writing our stories at this point, thankfully.
Mizell, the use of AI is part of the 2 classes you currently teach at Kent State, Media and the Law of Media and Ethics. Are there ground rules that you lay out for the students at the beginning of the semester?
Yes. Let me actually start with what I would say the evolution of artificial intelligence in that in higher education, we really, in the School of Media and Journalism in particular, I think straddle 2 very different and very significant aspects of this debate. Number one, I think AI is starting to cause people to question the value of an undergraduate education, period, full stop. And that there are those in higher education who see the wide availability of generative AI as being an existential threat to the business model of higher ed. In other words, if generative AI can write your papers for you, if generative AI can provide really the essence and the meat of a university lecture with a 3-paragraph prompt, well, why do you need me? And so that has been an area where, from just a leadership and a curriculum and administrative level, the initial response was don't use AI at all. Because when ChatGPT first hit the scene about 2 years ago, just seeing AI-generated output being turned in as research papers and essentially being a content factory for assignments, the initial response was no. We're not interested in this, because what students need to understand and need to learn is the process of conducting research, is the process of thinking through the big questions that are embodied in the learning objectives of our courses. I think very quickly, however, people realize, well, this technology is not going anywhere. And so back to your initial question about the beginning of the semester instruction, the beginning of the semester instruction 2 years ago was no. The beginning of the semester instruction a year later was, if you use it, you must disclose it. In other words, we consider the use of generative AI to be tantamount to plagiarism if it is not disclosed. We're now in year 3, and now we're at the point where we're building in AI into the classroom. And so students in my media enterprise class, for example, a couple of them are here with us today. They just finished a group assignment where they've literally been working to identify audience personas for media brands, developing their jobs to be done, to be able to create content that addresses the needs and the pain points of consumers. And most recently, they were given the direction to take all of the work that they had done and put that into AI, and then critically analyze the result of AI. And so the paper that I'm starting to grade now is literally ask them to evaluate the quality of the AI output and identify what aspects of the AI output ring true to you, what aspects of the AI output seem synthetic, seem made up. Because ultimately, in communications professions, what we want is we want people to have the ability to use AI to extend their capability, but not to create content that can't be verified, not to create content that can't be, where we cannot ascertain whether or not it is true. Because at its core, journalism is the discipline of verification. If you can't verify the output of AI, you can't use it. And that really is the human element that we have to preserve.
As both a moderator and a member of the media community in Northeast Ohio, representing IdeaStream Public Media, I did want to share a little bit about how we view AI in our own newsroom. Transparency is a big part of that, as you were touching on, Mizell. A couple of things, and you can find all this in our ethics guideline, which is on our website under the news section. Any information generated by AI requires human verification. Our primary aim is to create efficiencies, which is what you're talking about. How can we extend what we're doing, freeing up staff time for creative and higher level tasks? And most importantly, if generative AI is used in reporting or the creation of a story, we will be transparent about it. Transparency is critical. I want to turn it around to how receptive your newsrooms are when it comes to using AI.
I think it's a tale of two divisions within our newsroom. Our data journalists are fully embracing it because, first off, they're probably the smartest people in our newsroom, and they're very adept at analyzing numbers and figures, and so they've kind of been born into the early stages of AI analysis. So they're leading our newsroom in terms of that. On the flip side, I think there's some concerns that the wordsmiths I think there's some concerns there of being replaced, and that's the one area where we're adamant about. We're still, using the human element. We're not looking to replace anybody as a journalist. Again, it goes to transparency. Google is AI. I mean, whenever you start to write a story, that's one of the first steps you take is to Google the topic that you're writing about. So there's not much difference there. But so we're embracing it. We know that is the future. But again, to your point, we're going to be very transparent about it. It's a tool that we use to augment our work, but it is not the end all. I think it can be a great use to the reporter, and certainly it's. From the data analysis perspective, it's vital to the work that they're doing.
If I were to sum up the number one concern of my students, it is how am I going to find a job? Journalism jobs in the best of times can be difficult to come by. And, having spent 20 years as both a newsroom editor and a corporate news executive, I will be the first person to tell you that in order to make the numbers work, if I still had my corporate job, I would be sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how can I generate more content for less money? That's just a fact. And so the questions that people have about potentially being replaced by AI are valid questions. They are valid questions. Now, going to the column that is getting a whole lot of traction in journalism circles right now from Chris Quinn of Cleveland.com. You had a student say, I'm not sure I want this job, and making that decision based on ethical grounds. And one of the other classes I teach is journalism ethics, and one of the case studies we have in my class is a case study of the Wisconsin State Journal, a Lee Enterprises newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin, that rolled out an AI tool to the newsroom and told their journalists to play around with it. Well, a entry-level journalist played around with it. That newsroom ended up publishing a story that journalist created, stripped it across the top of the front page of the print edition, and led the website that contained hallucinations, that can contain made-up quotes. Long story short, that reporter was dismissed. And what I ask my students to do is to review that case and to provide their take on the ethical questions that should be considered. And to a person, their response is that the fault here is not strictly on the journalist, but is on the news organization. The news organization that rolled out a tool and said, play with it, without guardrails, without guidelines, without appropriate policies. And so my sense of, not being in the room for that interaction with the editor of the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, but I will bet you money that student felt like they might be hung out to dry if something with the AI tool goes wrong and bad information ends up being published.
One clarification on the idea stream policy that I mentioned earlier about the use of generative AI. We will be fully disclosing that if we use it in stories. We just wrapped up an intensive week-long reporting project looking at all facets of artificial intelligence in Northeast Ohio life. Two of the stories did use generative AI. It was clearly indicated. In one of them, it was amusing, Shuffle, which is our regular look at the music scene in Northeast Ohio. The reporter used AI, clearly stated, to create a theme song for Shuffle, but used that as a way to introduce the conversation to the very real challenges and opportunities that musicians in Northeast Ohio are facing. The other one was done by our supervising producer of Newscast, and it was all about the personal impacts of AI and the job he does. I encourage you to listen to it because it's good. I'm just going to leave it at that. But again, very clear that generative AI is part of that. There was a survey done 2 years ago. It found that 94% of those who responded want journalists to disclose when we use artificial intelligence. But here comes the paradox. A study last year from the group Trusting News found that when we do say that we're using AI as part of our reporting, that trust in us drops. What to do? What to do?
I think in general there's a curiosity out there. I mean, everybody's on social media. I don't know about you guys, but there's just this proliferation of AI-generated content nowadays that makes you really distrust everything that you're seeing and reading. So I think that that's trickling down to the work that we do, and I think it leads to a lot of the problems that the media have today in terms of audience trust. You know, we have a lot of work to do to regain that. AI is not helping. So I think transparency and honesty is something that's very important that we need to convey to our audience. And it is a conundrum. Like, I'm not going to trust something that's done by AI. We all had examples. We'll plug something in and we'll get bad answers that we know just off the top of our head that it's not factual. I think we have to be responsible and transparent in what we do, but we also, too, have to face the fact that it's here and it's going to stay and it's going to be a big part of what we do. But I think working on the trust is imperative for us moving forward.
So, Mizell, my question to you, in addition to teaching, you also have worked with student media at Kent State. What sort of guidance do they have about AI in the reporting? And what's the feedback that they get from readers, from viewers of the various media outlets for student media?
Student media is independent, and what that means is that the students make their own decisions about how they go about using technology. You know, we create the environment for them, and in the last update of their ethics policy, they said we don't want to use it. And if it is used, it needs to be disclosed. But to this point, they really have not dug into how to use it on a day-to-day basis. As I advise them, what I am encouraging them to do is to experiment with the tools. The AI models that are out there are improving rapidly. I do an exercise in my writing class where I put in a prompt to the free version of ChatGPT, and I said, write an obituary of Mizell Stewart III. And the first time I did it, it said that I was well and truly dead. It invented wives and children, the names of the name of a wife who is not my wife, the names and ages of children I don't have, and awards that I never received in places I never worked. I did this again in the newsroom last night with the students and did the same thing. And ChatGPT came back and said, Mizell Stewart is not dead from any evidence that we can find. It said, here is information, here's biographical information on him, along with the sources, based on what I can find on the web. If you want me to write something in an obituary style, I would be happy to do that, but I would be very careful not to put that out there because I have not been able to verify, in fact, that he is dead. That is the evolution of an AI model, the output of an AI model on the same prompt from October to February. And so what I'm telling students is use the models. I don't want you to create content with them. But what I want you to do is I want you to learn their capabilities. I want you to experiment with them. And this is advice I have for everyone in this room. You cannot be afraid of what you don't know anything about.
We are starting to see a bunch of questions come in, so we'll get right to them. First one is, I've had a few friends express concerns about newsrooms and journalists using AI for any reason. How do you respond to those concerns? And can you share more about how AI may actually strengthen your newsrooms? I think you touched on that a little bit in terms of
Couple things. I think background research and explanation of concepts. I think is an excellent use of an AI tool in journalism. One of the use cases we went through in the student newsroom were concepts that students don't necessarily understand right out of the gate, but that they have to report on. In higher education, there's what is known as shared governance. It is a process of making major decisions in a university setting, which is why sometimes it can take a long time for, say, a change in an academic program to unfold. And if you're not familiar with that concept in the context of higher education, you sit out on the outside and you wonder, well, why is it taking so long to just stand up a new major or a new program? And so one of the students was reporting on a transformation process that's underway at Kent State. And I said, well, part of the reasons it's taking so long is this concept of shared governance. Open up ChatGPT. Let's write a prompt that asks it to explain what that is. And you can use that information then when you go on the interview with the provost to sharpen your questions. So in other words, you're not asking this person to start from zero with you. You've actually done a little bit of background research to understand conceptually what is going on, and you can get to the heart of the matter in the interview that much faster. I think research is a wonderful use case. I also think idea generation is an outstanding use case if you're trying to connect the dots between a story that's in the news and what's happening and what's happening locally. We struggle a lot of times to, quote, localize national stories. Ways to accelerate your creativity. It's a really good use of AI. What you don't want AI to do is to replace, again, the human element. An AI agent is not going to get that interview from the reluctant source. It's just not possible to bear witness in real time to an event that is unfolding in the street, in the community. Well, AI is not going to replace that. And so to what extent can we help to coach people to responsibly use it in ways that help people get to the heart of stories that much faster?
Yeah, and I concur with a lot of what Mizell said. It is the human element that I think is the threat to so many different people. But, artificial intelligence has been around for decades. You think about in the 70s when you got your $300 calculator or your digital watch. I mean, those are that's artificial intelligence. It's the generative AI that has everybody a little concerned about the disruption and the possibility of that. That's your ChatGPT and whatnot. But if you take it as a tool, it's going to make us better journalists. If it's used responsibly and embraced, we'll be more efficient, we'll be smarter. But that human element still needs to be utilized. And everything that AI or the generative ChatGPT are kicking out, there's something that right now is probably started with reporting by a human. So that element still needs to be there. It's only going to kick out what one of us have already created. But just being responsible with what we have, utilizing it to make us faster, better, smarter. Just embrace the technology. It's here and it's here to stay. So I think we have to be conscious of that element and be transparent about it again.
That was our Andrew Meyer speaking with Phil Trexler from the Marshall Project Cleveland and Mizell Stewart from Kent State University at an Akron Press Club event. You can find that full conversation and more of our reporting on artificial intelligence at ideastream.org. We'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, colorectal cancer deaths are rising among adults under 50. What's behind the trend, and what can you do to protect your health? This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll talk about it when we come right back. This is The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us on your Monday. Dawson's Creek actor James Van Der Beek died last month at 48 after a battle with colorectal cancer. His death has brought renewed attention to this disease, which also killed actor Chadwick Boseman in 2020 when he was just 43. Colorectal cancer is now the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among people under age 50 in the United States. That's according to the Journal of the American Medical Association. While most cases are still found in adults over 50, rates in younger adults are rising. In 2018, the American Cancer Society updated its guidelines, recommending that average-risk adults begin screening at the age of 45 rather than 50. Colorectal cancer is still highly treatable when detected early. And joining us now today to talk about preventative health measures and screening options that are helping to save people's lives, we have Dr. Joshua Somavilla, colon and rectal surgical oncologist at Cleveland Clinic. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Also joining us by phone, we have Dr. Menden Shia, gastroenterologist at Metro Health. Dr. Shia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
And joining us by phone as well, we have one of Dr. Somavilla's patients from the Cleveland Clinic. Amy Fogarty is a teacher at Shager Heights High School. Amy, thank you for calling in. We'll make sure that we have Amy on the line, that she can hear us and everything's dialed in there, technically speaking. If you want to join the conversation, if you have a question about colon cancer or colorectal cancer, maybe a story you'd like to share, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org or message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Dr. Somavilla, I'll start by asking you, can you set the scene for us and explain what colorectal cancer is?
Yeah, so colorectal cancer is one of the more common causes of cancer and cancer death that we see here in the United States and across the world. And it's a cancer that usually starts as a precancerous polyp that takes years to usually grow and develop into cancer. And then from that point, it can cause bleeding, it can cause abdominal discomfort, and it can spread to other parts of the body. And all these things cause significant problems for the people who end up getting diagnosed with colorectal cancer.
Dr. Shia, can you expand on that for us a bit and talk about the difference between colon cancer and colorectal cancer?
So like colorectal cancer, basically including the colon cancer and the rectal cancer, I think that's more of like difference from a surgical standpoint, because the anatomy really matter when it comes to the surgical plan. But like overall, like for the public, like knowledge and awareness, I think we could probably just like conclude it in colorectal cancer.
And Menden, colorectal cancer cases are on the decline overall, but we're seeing more cases in people under 50. Why is it becoming more common among younger people?
That's a good question. We don't really have like one single like answer or single cause that we can blame to. It's likely like multifactorial, like let's say like changes in diet, like rising number in obesity, and then more sedentary lifestyle, and then sometimes we can talk about like the alternations in the gut microbiome may all play the role. But I think like a more important thing for the listeners to know is that colon cancer is no longer just like the disease of older adult. We actually see many young adults, young people also develop like cancer. And then so like whenever there's like a symptom like rectal bleeding or some unexplained anemia in younger people, we should just like not be ignored.
Joshua, what are more red flag symptoms that might warrant a visit to the doctor?
I think, some of them have been mentioned. The biggest ones are usually bleeding, abdominal pain, or changes in the way your bowels are working. So things like constipation or even diarrhea. These symptoms can sometimes develop slowly. So often it's easy for people to kind of ignore them or say like, oh, this is probably just my hemorrhoids acting up or something like that. And so, and obviously, sometimes these are symptoms that are embarrassing for people to talk to their doctors about. So there are a lot of reasons why people will sometimes avoid having these things evaluated promptly. I think another important thing to talk about is a lot of times by the time people develop severe symptoms from colon cancer, it's by that point become often a relatively advanced stage. And so things that are found on colonoscopy, like precancerous polyps, or even sometimes early stage cancers, often don't cause any symptoms at all. And that's why colonoscopy is an important tool that we have to find these things before they develop into significant problems.
We do have Amy Fogarty with us. Amy is a patient of Dr. Somavilla's and a teacher at Shaker Heights High School. Amy, welcome to the Sound of Ideas.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story.
And that's what we would love to do right now is hear about your story, Amy. How did you first discover that something might be wrong?
Well, I actually didn't have any of those symptoms that Dr. Somavilla just spoke to, but I'm a teacher, so I'm a rule follower, and I turned 45, so I scheduled my colonoscopy. And I had my first colonoscopy in June 2023, and 4 days later, I was at school, the last day of school. I remember exactly where I was, and they called me with the results and said, "You have cancer." And immediately my mind goes to, oh my goodness, I have a husband and 3 kids and a family and other friends, and what am I going to do? And so that started a chain of appointments with Dr. Somavilla and oncology and genetic counseling and tests and blood work. And then had a surgery with Dr. Somavilla on August 1st, which was called a low anterior resection. And I had a loop ileostomy, which is where they cut your colon in half and then they divert everything to the outside of an ostomy bag. And so that was quite a change. And then I went through chemotherapy and had another surgery to reverse that ostomy bag, and then had another colonoscopy with Dr. Somavilla, and he took out a polyp and found out that that was cancerous. So that led to another set of treatments with radiation, and it's been a long journey for the past 2.5 years. Dr. Somavilla, I credit him and the oncologists at the Cleveland Clinic for saving my life. And had I not been a rule follower at the age of 45, I would not be able to have this conversation with you today. So I'm very thankful that I followed the rules and followed the advice of the expert. Could be here to hopefully encourage someone else to follow the rules as well and save their life.
Wow, Amy. I can tell that this is definitely something that's emotional for you to talk about. You can hear it in your voice there. So thank you very much for sharing your story with us. You said you're a rule follower, so that's why you got the screening at 45. Who alerted you to the fact that you should be getting that screening?
So actually, I have a friend who is in medical research, and she was actually working for a colorectal doctor in Milwaukee at the time and was like, hey, you're turning 45, you better get your colonoscopy. So I did. Not like I wouldn't have anyways, because I, had met with my primary care physician and he recommended it as well. But it was just that extra push from somebody who was in the field to say, hey, you better do this. And boy, am I glad that I did.
And what does it look like for you now from here on out? You said you're in remission, right?
Well, I hope so. So actually on President's Day, I had my set of scans that I have every 3 months, and those were clear, which is great. And my oncologist said I can graduate now to seeing them and doing the scans every 4 months. So I had a little celebration that day. And the last colonoscopy that I had with Dr. Somavilla back in December of 2025 was my first ever clear colonoscopy, so we had a little celebration then as well. But I do have some effects of all of this treatment. Since I had chemo and radiation, I have some, in quite a few, and I have four pretty major surgeries. I have quite a few scars in my body, and because of the amount of colon and rectum that Dr. Somavilla had to remove from my body, I do have some lingering functioning issues, and so my diet has had to change quite a bit. So it's hard to manage the oncologist telling you to eat the fruits and vegetables, but your body's saying, no, you can't have things with that much fiber. So I'm trying to find an even balance to make life work. But, every day is an adventure, and we're thankful that I'm here and that I can keep living my life as a mom, as a teacher, as a wife, and as a daughter.
If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we're talking about colon cancer and colorectal cancer. We're talking with someone who recently was diagnosed with the diseases. And the number to call in if you have a question or a comment or a story you'd like to share is 866-578-0903. And you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Amy, you mentioned, a friend sharing with you it's time for you to get this screening. That screening is a colonoscopy. Did any part of you have any hesitance? Some people are a bit hesitant about the colonoscopy procedure.
I was not hesitant because I knew it was something that needed to be done. But yes, I was a little scared of the preparation. But honestly, to be uncomfortable for 3 days, to not, have to drink liquids only one day and then take the prescriptions that the doctor gives you, and there are a number of different ways in order to clean out your colon to prepare for this test. But those 3 days of being uncomfortable, as opposed to 3+ years of your life of going to the doctor so frequently, boy, that seems like a pretty easy trade-off to me. So no hesitation, and I would encourage everyone to have no hesitation as well. It might be uncomfortable for a couple days, but in the long run, you're saving yourself a lot of stress, a lot of worry, and just your health will be better for it.
Before we let you go here, Amy, we know you're busy. You're a high school teacher. You probably have class to get to. I want to ask you, as a teacher and someone who lives an active life, how did treatment impact your day-to-day life, both while it was happening and then now, adjustments you're having to make?
So during chemotherapy, I did have to stop working based on the recommendations of my doctors. Luckily, I had led a very healthy lifestyle prior to that and was very rarely sick, so I had enough sick days in the bank. But then when the reoccurrence happened, I did have to, I came to work all the sessions during my radiation treatment, which was very challenging, but I did. And then having another surgery, I did have to have some of my colleagues give me their sick time, which was wonderful, so that I could keep going through my treatment yet still getting paid so I can keep supporting my family. So, but every day is a challenge right now. I don't know what food is going to work well with me still, even though it's almost been a year since my last surgery. But, you keep going, and I'm trying to add back in yoga and running and just meditation every night as well, just to get myself through it. And it does help.
Amy, we are wishing you the absolute best in your continued recovery and really hoping you get that green light that you're in remission. Thank you so much for calling into the Sound of Ideas today. Amy Fogarty, colorectal cancer patient and teacher at Shaker Heights High School. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Now, Joshua, being Amy's doctor there, you were with her every step of the way here. I want to ask you about what she mentioned there, the ostomy bag. I know what that is because I had a grandma that had colon cancer, and so she had an ostomy bag, and it never went away. But Amy was able to reverse that. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon, though not guaranteed, that patients will sometimes need to have an ostomy bag to get safely through surgeries. When we talk about rectal cancer in particular, depending on where the cancer is located, there are some rectal cancers that involve the anus and involve the muscles down at your bottom. And for those situations, it's basically not possible to do a curative surgery without having a permanent bag. There are other situations where we're able to do a reconnection of the colon below where a tumor is, but because of patients receiving radiation before that or other technical things that happen at surgery, the safest thing is to not have poop going through that area while it's healing. And so we have a temporary bag upstream of that eventually gets closed after they've recovered from all the surgeries. And so that's the type of situation that she was describing. That's not uncommon for people who have rectal cancer but don't need a permanent bag. An ostomy bag is something that is obviously very scary to a lot of patients. And though for a lot of people, it ends up being life-saving, and for most people, they're able to adjust to living an ordinary life, and it doesn't limit them in their day-to-day activities.
For anyone just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we are talking about colon cancer and colorectal cancer, and that screenings are recommended at age 45. We've got experts with us. We have a doctor from the Cleveland Clinic and also a doctor from Metro Health with us as well. So if you want to call in, the number is 866-578-0903, and you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Mendon, can you talk to us about a colonoscopy and what that is, if that's considered a surgical procedure, and the prep that's involved?
Yes, sure. So colonoscopy is basically a very like a safe, normally outpatient procedure. Normally like that including like part of a preparation process. It normally take like a day before the procedure. For the patient to drink a whole big jar of the solution to clean up all the stool from their column. So in that way, we can take a very decent look of all the corner in the column to make sure we're not missing any lesion or cancer. And then the procedure itself is actually very quick and safe. Normally, it takes just like 20, 30 minutes or so to get it done. It's also get done under like an anesthesia. Sometimes we do it probably under mild sedation or under like what we call like anesthesia assistant sedation. But anyhow, like it should be done in a very comfortable and safe way. And then depends on how many polyp normally we see during the colonoscopy. We might have the like a patient come back to do the procedure every 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. If everything looks normal, meaning the patient doesn't really having that high risk of developing polyp, normally the patient just need to come back every 10 years. That's what we call like golden ticket. And then and also instead of colonoscopy, we can also like if patient like having like a fear to the procedure or anyhow, we can also offer some alternative testing, including like the in-home like stool test. That's also another option.
Is that as effective, the in-home stool test? I know we see commercials for this. Cologuard comes to mind. Is that just as good or not as good? What do you think, Mendon?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So stool-based DNA tests, like it's actually the Cologuard test. They are very effective in screening like the early cancer or advanced polyp. But the only downside for those like stool tests is like it might not be able to see those like a relatively like smaller polyps. But polyp like still carry the potential of turning into cancer after many years. So colonoscopy is a more like comprehensive like procedure. It can not only like take a look, but it can also remove the polyp at the same time. So it's like more a preventative test. But like any test get done is actually the best test. So if patient having any concern for the procedure, we could always like start with a like stool test. Like that's definitely better than no test at all.
And Mendon, a little bit about access to these kinds of tests. Are these things covered by insurance? We know that the recommended screening begins at age 45. So does that cover that for people in that age group?
I believe so, because like they're actually like under all those like major society guideline, and then they're actually considered as like preventative screening testing. It's generally covered by most of the insurance plan without any out-of-pocket costs. But like coverage detail can vary. So like, and sometimes patient definitely having some confusion about the billing. So I would encourage people like talk to their primary care physician and then also talk to their like insurance like company to see like what's actually their coverage plan look like. And then also, like many communities actually having programs that support a screening for those like patient like uninsured. I also encourage people like who doesn't have insurance also talk to your primary care physician because there might be some options available over there.
If anyone's just joining us, we are talking about colon cancer and colorectal cancer. And if you have a comment or a question, you can give us a call at 866 578 0903. And you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Leanne from Hudson has written in, is there anything we can do to clean out our colon before a colonoscopy besides the nasty drink? So, Mendon, since we were talking about colonoscopies with you, I'll ask that question of you. Anything other than actually ingesting something that you can do to clean out the colon?
Yes, actually, like I think like in the last like decades or so, we've been designing like a whole bunch of different like type of bowel preparation. In the old days, it used to be all those like large volume, which is still the most effective way to clean up everything. But like, cause like some patient might have like a lot of like nausea, vomiting, like drinking those like large volume. So now we also have like smaller volume one, for which like your patient can have like better like patient will be more comfortable drinking those like smaller volume one, we even have like pill-form bowel preparation. But the insurance coverage for all different type of bowel preparation actually also vary. So sometimes it might cost a lot under some insurance plan if we're prescribing the pill form bowel preparation. So that's also another thing your doctor can discuss with you, which one is actually the best for you.
We have a call now from Michelle in Cleveland. Michelle, welcome to the Sound of Ideas. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm just calling to encourage people not to be afraid. I was afraid of it. I've had, I think, 3 of them now. And they did find polyps. Fortunately, mine were all benign. But to me, the hardest part, after my first one and over the fear, is drinking all that stuff the day before and just get a magazine or a good book and stay close to the toilet. It's really not a bad procedure. And the first time I had it, they let me stay awake so I could watch, which I know that's probably weird, but I thought it was fascinating. The other 2 times, they wouldn't let me stay awake, which disappointed me because I just find it very interesting. So I'm just calling to encourage people, do it. It's not bad at all. The hardest part, like I said, is getting all that solution down. Someone I know did just take the pills. They said that was easier, but I guess I'm just goofy. I want to take the liquid. I want to make sure everything is cleaned out. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Michelle, and very happy to hear that your results were benign. So thank you very much for that. Joshua, I'd like to ask you now, why did the screening age drop to 45 from 50? Has it helped catch more cases?
It certainly has, and Amy, who was on the call earlier, is a perfect illustration of that. The reason that it dropped was the reasons that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. Is the rate of colorectal cancer is drastically increasing in people who are under the age of 50. So by starting colonoscopies at the age of 50, there are a large number of people who would be having things grow that's going undetected. So I think by dropping that age, we're significantly capturing a lot more people and preventing cancers that would otherwise be forming. I think there's still ongoing work to figure out what the best thing is to do for people who are under the age of 45, because that's a concerning age group too. And as of now, those are people who are really only getting evaluated if they're developing symptoms, which, as we talked about, can sometimes be already at a somewhat advanced stage. So I think as we learn more about what's going on in the community and in the population, there's a chance that things may change even further.
Joshua, you mentioned that there are other people who experience symptoms and they end up getting screening earlier, but who else should get cancer screenings outside of that age group, the 45-year-olds, for this?
Yeah, so certainly anybody who's considered high risk, which includes people who have a history of certain conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. People who have a family history of colorectal cancer usually begin screening at an earlier age, depending on the age of the family members who are affected. People who have other conditions that predispose them to forming colon polyps. Those people all fall into groups where they would undergo some form of screening, usually colonoscopy, at an earlier age than even 45 potentially.
So when you talk about a family history, as I mentioned, my grandmother had colorectal cancer. I think I said colon cancer earlier, but based on what you said, I think it was colorectal cancer. So does that mean that I'm someone who should get screened potentially earlier?
Yeah, and it would depend on the age at which that family member was diagnosed, and it's more impactful on your recommendations if it's a first degree relative, like a parent or a sibling. But even having a second degree relative, like a grandparent, would impact your age at recommending to start screening.
And Joshua, have you seen anything in terms of research development on colon cancer and colorectal cancer that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, in particular, related to the question about why this is happening in earlier, in younger patients. There's a lot of epidemiological research looking into what are the factors in the diet that are contributing to this? What are the environmental factors that are contributing to this? Is it chemicals in the environment? Is it microplastics? All these other things that people are thinking about. Is it related to the bacteria in the colon, which is something that Dr. Shia mentioned earlier on? These are all things that there's a lot of active research going on to help figure out, like, why is this happening to younger people? And is there any interventions that we could do to help lower those risks?
All right, I want to thank our guests for calling in for us today. This is all the time that we have for this particular conversation. Dr. Joshua Somavilla, colon and rectal surgical oncologist at Cleveland Clinic, we appreciate your time.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
And also Dr. Mendan Shia, gastroenterologist at Metro Health. Thank you for calling in today.
Thank you for having me today.
That wraps up the show for today. If you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also listen to The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts and watch the show on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or leave us a message or a comment on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. On Thursday, we talked about this year's nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Bobby wrote in, I just wanted to ask why Jethro Tull has never been nominated as an entry for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Their music is still being played on classic rock stations today, and Ian Anderson had wanted to educate young musicians by inviting them to play with his band while on tour. They should have been considered years ago. Thank you for your thoughts on that, Bobby. Now, tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll be talking about rising tensions in the Middle East as the U.S. and Israel launched a major attack on Iran on Saturday. We'll also give you a preview of Wednesday's community tour regarding the future of Burke Lakefront Airport. I'll be talking with freelance reporter Steve Litt. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going. We will see you back here tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas.